Welcome to the Fire Sprinkler Podcast with Chris and Logan. This episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast is brought to you by FSC iCalc. iCalc is a web-based sprinkler platform that reduces liability, minimizes delays, and provides peace of mind on your work. FSC iCalc can size a pump in under a minute, help with estimating a system, confirm compliance with NFPA 13, and more, all from their web browser. Learn more, go to their website at www.fsc-icalc.com. That's www.fsc-icalc.com for more information. Hey everybody, this episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast is a discussion with Philip Eckert and Hasu Doshi from FSC iCalc, the sponsors of this episode. They talk about the various applets that they have available at www.fsc-icalc.com. Various design-based applets that you can use from your web browser on your phone or your web browser on your computer. They have a lot of really neat and interesting applets that you can use. The flow testing apps, elevation changes if you're doing a flow test that's not directly in front of a project they have on the go. It'll take into account the elevation changes across I believe it's across the US only right now, but they're hoping on working on getting kind of North America wide here in the next little future. Another thing they're looking for is for anybody, if you have an idea for an app or an applet that they could use, the one recommendation that I have that you'll hear in the podcast is for an obstruction app. You input what type of sprinkler you're using, residential, commercial, quick response, standard response, blah, blah, blah. It'll tell you if you're so far away from it, you can be this high above it, things like that. All the things that we can look up, but if there's something available that can make it quicker and easier for us to do in the field, why not do it? Anyways, this is my conversation with Philip Eckert and Hasu Doshi, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks, everybody. Before I get going with the actual interview, thank you, everybody, for all the support in the Fire Sprinkler Podcast. I've had a big increase in subscribers, so if anybody out there is a new follower from Nashville, the NFSA conference, welcome. Thank you. And I look forward to talking to many of you in future episodes of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast. If you're interested in coming on, fire me off an email, chris@firesprinklerpodcast.com. Find me on social media, share my stuff, and don't forget to hashtag Fire Sprinkler Podcast. Thank you and enjoy. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast. On this episode, I have Philip Eckert and Hasu Doshi from FSC iCalc on, and we are going to kind of go through generally what kind of applets and things like that they are developing for their web-based. Essentially, it's a mini calculation. I won't say mini because that kind of downplays it, but you guys have developed a website and a page that has many different tools that can assist designers and fitters as well in the field with general calculations and things like that. So why don't you guys start by telling me where the website came from, whose idea it was, and where you guys saw this opening in the market for this?
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having us, Chris, by the way. I think the original idea really started with Hasu back all the way in the 70s. So I'll let him talk a little more about that. I don't know. We were on in October talking with you, and we might have mentioned, he built some software back in the 70s, and they brought me on as an intern. And the project's really spiraled from there. So everything we can think of to do, we try to implement it. So, but I don't know, Hasu, what did you think about software for?
Yes, so Chris, this is such an interesting thing. In our industry, I notice we don't have any companies training the people, and NFPA 13 is getting so complicated, going from one chapter to other chapter. Even with the people with the experience have a difficulty following that. So we wrote the software back in 70s for fire sprinkler contractors and insurance company, hydraulic calculations, stock listing, inventory control, estimating, so on and so forth. Then I ran into Chris, Phil, such a smart guy. So I said, why don't we take that software and make a simple one where people can ask 5, 6 questions and you get a quick answer. It's not a detailed calculations, but something that you can check for your QC, you use before you start doing designing, and transfer our knowledge for the young people. So that's where we started from. And Phil has done an amazing job. If you can go through some of these applets, and we can talk about it as we go through that. So this is where we started from. We took our huge hydraulic calculation program and took a part of it and created applet for each one of it. And as we went through, we got a response back from our customer. Says, how about you write this app? How about you write that? And Phil has been proactive. He comes back within a day or a week, say, here it is. So when we go through that, we will talk about these applets and why did we start with and where we end up being there.
Okay, so why don't we, I've got a list of the apps that you guys have for the upfront on design. Why don't we kind of talk a little bit about how they work, and you guys can just explain kind of generally where it came from and why it can help people out there. So you've got one, the flow test, your flow test applet. What does it do and how can it help people out in the field?
Sure. So I mean, everybody knows what a flow test is, and there are quite a few options online for, recording your flow test. Obviously, you got to document all these things. So when you're actually out on the field, it's helpful to be able to take down all the information and have it saved somewhere where you don't have to worry about getting the file. And so it's not something revolutionary. It's just a flow test recorder, but there's a couple nice features with it. It saves your flow tests all in your iCalc account. Another nice thing is that sometimes you get a hydrant, it's out in the field, there's no address, maybe the instructions are like walk 100 yards out this way. The applet actually includes a get GPS button, which basically drops in a precise GPS coordinate of where that hydrant is and saves it in the flow test. So you're able to see exactly later on where that hydrant is located at. Yeah, and then you save it on your phone. It's in your iCalc account. You get home to the office, and it's waiting for you there to email or just keep. So that one's a pretty straightforward applet. I think we made it pretty early on.
That's true. That's true.
And so do you use the flow test as well? So that one kind of goes hand in hand with the elevation applet?
Yeah, so the elevation applet, that's a pretty new one. I was talking with some contractors, what was it, 2 months ago?
Yes.
Even? And they were saying, what our biggest problem is? We can't ever get elevation data on the hydrants. And so obviously, elevation change plays a huge role in how much pressure you're going to have at the base of riser. So we decided, an easy way to kind of hack around this, just get GPS data and match it up against the USGS map of the United States. They have elevation data for the whole country, and just plot those points and see what the difference is.
Oh, it's as easy as that.
Chris, you have a fire sprinkler contracting background.
Yes.
When we call the city, we try to get a flow test, and we have a difficulty getting the elevations. And
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
hydrant could be at the top of the hill, and your project would be bottom one, or could be vice versa. And and you find out when you start doing the design, you go to site and say, boy, I missed completely. I needed 10 more pounds just to make up for the elevation. So Phil did the GPS and got us. So that saves a lot of time for contractors.
So they've got elevations for essentially everywhere. Is it North America or is it US based only?
I think it's US based only. Now, the caveat is, and I should say, they're only so accurate. I think they're 1/3 arc second definition. So, it's give or take 5 PSI basically on that. It'll get you in the right neighborhood, but it's not going to be good enough for like your final report.
About
Yeah,
five.
so essentially for 5 psi, you're a 9 foot, 10 foot elevation difference,
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
give
that's
or
what they
take, right?
say. You really got to be careful if you've got like weird terrain. You know, if you have like a ditch or something that doesn't get included in the survey, something like that might get you. But outside of that, it's pretty accurate.
hmm And you know what? I'm sure if you're using elevation changes and stuff like that in a hydraulic calculation, for the most part, I can honestly say that I don't think I've ever had any building engineers or consultants or anything like that question the elevation of the hydrant in relation to the project before. That being said, where I'm from is fairly flat and straightforward. But if nobody has, nobody's ever said, well, what's the elevation difference? And but like I said, just because it's not applicable in my area doesn't mean it's not applicable, or it isn't applicable anywhere else in the world. There are other places around, the U.S., very hilly, and the piping does a lot of crazy things.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, we're from Kansas, so it's
And
pretty flat out here too.
but we are from Missouri too,
Yeah,
which is a lot of hills. So
yeah.
sure. Okay.
Awesome. So let's get into the BOR applet. Why don't you start? What is the BOR applet, and what would you use it for?
Chris, this is so interesting. Uh, it mainly applies to insurance company. Say the building has been designed and there's a hydraulic sticker on the riser. They run a flow test and they want to find out how good is the system, what they call rating of the system. So this applet takes that information and kind of you answer 5 to 6 questions and tells you how good your system is. It
Okay.
rates whether you're 10% deficient or 20% better, so on and so forth. In our industry, as you know, the flow test changes over the years. The system may be designed 20 years back. So, and we as a designer or a contractor, the customer comes to us, says, I'm buying this building, and this is what the design criteria is. How good is my system, and what can I do with it? So we wrote that the BOR is widely used by our people, and that came from a couple of our users.
Okay.
The thing I'd like to add,
Mm.
because it was really hard to code, was you can actually lay out the piping in between the hydrant and the base riser.
Ah.
And we included functionality to include loops in the piping,
Hmm.
and it'll
Oh,
lay
okay.
out the water and figure out what your true friction losses are, including the loops.
Really? Now, are you having anybody? So you're using the bottom of riser essentially to get um, information for the data plate that's at the riser.
Yes, that is
Yeah.
true.
Okay. Awesome. What else? What else you got here? You guys got tank size. What is the tank size? I'm assuming you put in a multitude of things like duration of water supply required, things
Yeah,
like that, and it'll
I
tell
mean,
you based off your system design what you need.
So, Chris, if I can answer this one, we developed the water supply applet, and the tank size came as a byproduct of it. In a contracting business or a consulting engineering business, whenever we start the project, the first question we ask, do I need a pump or do I need a tank?
Right.
Because those are big ticket items and that impacts the building design. If you need a pump, then you need a pump house, you need an outside door and all the things, electrical supply and everything goes with it. So water supply we created mainly for designer before he starts laying out the system or for estimator. In a contracting, you estimate 10, 15 projects and you may get one. So you don't have a time to do a detailed hydraulic calculation. So the water supply does the analysis and tells you whether you need a pump or tank. So once he says I need a tank, then people say, well, what size tank do I need? So,
Right.
so So it takes a water supply information and figures out the sizing of the tank.
That I could see where that would come in handy in. What do you guys have on the go right now for future applications or applets are you guys developing right now, and how soon can people expect to see them out there?
Yeah, so we're actually really close to releasing our storage application, which is going to be don't quote me on the 2019 chapters, but it's chapters 11 or chapters 12 through chapters 20 of NFPA 13. So all the storage chapters. And right now we're nearing completion. We'll probably release within the next week or so on class 1 through 4 for all of that.
Okay.
And then give us another couple weeks and we'll have all the plastics and the paper and tires out as well. So
Wow.
that's obviously a huge undertaking. I estimate we've almost doubled our code base just doing that.
I would think so. That would be a very, very, I mean, probably 60% of the book is chapters 11 to whatever, 11 to 20 or 22, right?
Yeah, it hasn't been so fun, but we're splitting it all up into different applets too, just so it's a little easier to work with. So each chapter basically gets its own applet. And then there's an applet at the front end to tell you which chapter to use, because that's also not always a clear-cut decision. So
that's right, yeah. Depending on what you want to use. So now, is there a way, and this is, I don't know how the app's going to work or anything like that, but is there a way to input your available water supply, and will it break down like typically 90%? This is how much water you have at the road. This is the storage you're going to need. Will it automatically tell you if you need a pump in a tank? Things like that?
My plan is this is really just, these applets navigate the standard for you. And at the end of it, I plan to integrate these applets with the water supply applet. So that way you can tell, based on what your requirements for this sprinkler are going to be, you can hook it into water supply and get that answer. But these applets themselves won't do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. What you guys are essentially trying to create, and I love it, is you're trying to create, and I'm not saying trying, but you guys are creating a sprinkler engineer that's available for questions online.
That is true. Chris is such an interesting, if I can share the story.
Yep.
The miscellaneous storage, which is chapter 13 now,
Yep.
came from NFPA 13 density curve that we were part of developing that. So when you go through chapter 12, which is the master of the storage applet, says all the thing of chapter 12 applies to everywhere else except chapter 13.
Okay.
And as you go through different chapter, they keep on referring to chapter 13 and with a modification. So I have a 50 years experience in the business and I still get lost. So I thought, just to give you example for extra hazard group 1 and 2.
Yep.
Chapter 12 gives you guidance. You go to chapter 13, you disregard everything else, go with the 13, then go to, I'm working on chapter 15 releasing, and that one says, yes, you can use chapter 13 with this modification. Extra hazard group 1, if it's K 8.0, then you can take a credit by 25%. Chapter 13 says, or chapter 11 says, any high temp head, you can take the extra credit. So we as a designer sometimes miss this thing. The system gets installed. The insurance company comes back after a year and says, you missed here. So our idea is a QC plus a professional liability. So it's very difficult to navigate from one chapter to other chapter because they keep on referencing with a modification for each chapter.
So it didn't, I'm assuming this probably took you guys maybe a day or two to develop all of these chapters, right?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
How long have you guys been working on the storage applet for? Like when did the idea come in, and is this like because I'm sure everybody listening knows that 12 to 20, those are your eye bleeders. Those are the ones, if you get into storage and you got to navigate. I like doing it because it's a challenge, and like you say, you've got to make sure you don't miss anything and go back and forth and make sure you're 100% covered in liability and all the blah 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 blah. But has this been a, 9 to 5 for the past 6 months? Like, Philip, last time we talked, Hasu was the sprinkler guy. You're the developer. Are you now getting fairly competent in sprinkler design? Like, I mean, just inputting all these formulas and navigating the book, like, are you getting up to speed with sprinkler now? Like, I think what's been 7 months now since we've talked last. You got to be getting pretty good.
Chris, if I can answer that, he
That would
knows
be that would be
he,
better now. Yes.
he knows NFPA 13 now better than I do
Oh my,
because
well,
I
because
yeah.
don't know about that, but
because I gave him a chapter, he reads through that, and he comes back with says, "Hasu, did you know this contradicts here to this chapter?" So he's the just to give you idea where this storage thing came from. I want to share my challenges. We do a lot of consulting, design work. We design the system using EC storage sprinklers. We missed completely most of the storage. You have 18-inch or 3 feet clearance from the deflector to top of the storage.
Okay.
EC sprinkler has a 4 feet of clearance. Up, the system was installed and we had to fix it to give a higher end head pressure. If you go to listing of the EC sprinkler storage, is a 7 psi starting pressure if you have a 4 feet clearance, is a higher pressure if you have a less than 4 feet, and we missed that completely.
Oh boy.
So we thought, how many people will go through that? So why don't we write a applet just to check what the NFPA 13 requirements are?
yeah, I think
Wow.
we started. To answer your question, Chris, I think this has always kind of been an idea since we started iCalc. We've been tinkering with it, but I think probably pretty seriously, like a 9 to 5, like you say, for the past 7 or 8 months.
Yes.
So
Wow.
it's been a long time coming for sure.
Yeah.
And
Now,
and and Chris, if I can add to, we owe it to our customer. They keep on feeding. Hey, how about we do this way? How about we add that one? And that has made our product better by listening to the people and adding to their comments.
Yeah, definitely.
mhm. So are you guys, what do you guys see? What do you guys see in the future for this? Obviously, you're developing the storage app now, but are you guys like eventually as you develop this, is your end game to partner with another, say, design software so that you can input the information and then within one of the other sprinkler design softwares, it'll tell you your maximum head spacing, your end pressure, and things like that. And eventually, you may be able to develop a product that maybe not designs a system itself, but can do a lot of the heavy lifting itself. Is that kind of the direction you want to go, or are you guys sticking with the essentially having an engineer in your pocket model?
Yeah, I mean, right now it is kind of just, the engineer in your pocket model. But I think long term, we're looking at incorporating the things that we build into a larger program. We have big ideas, but it's going to take a while to get there. Eventually we'd like to be able to just walk in and you take your phone out and scan a room or a building and you can get the bare bones of a redesign, in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, that's
But we're obviously quite a ways away from that. In the
yeah,
meantime,
maybe yeah.
we're
I'll
trying
call
to
you
just
back next week.
yeah. In the meantime, we're just trying to focus on expanding our logic and kind of building the brains of iCalc. We're looking at things like 409, the FM standards, things like that. So, like Hasu said, we're always taking suggestions and we try to turn them around as fast as we can. I kind of take it as a challenge that when we get a suggestion, I build the applet as fast as I can. So
Chris,
So,
if I can add on the storage thing that I always struggle when I'm designing, we select the sprinkler head, then we have to go to a manufacturer site and get a data sheet. So what we
yeah,
are doing now, the storage applet will give you a choices which sprinklers are applicable. Then you click on it and you click a manufacturer. This is what we are working on. It will go to the manufacturer site and bring the data sheet in.
wow,
And
that's
this is what we've been struggling before, so we thought would be very nice. So we are talking to few manufacturers, getting the data from them and linked to iCalc program.
wow, that's interesting. So you're going to like eventually you're going to have a list of hopefully from all the manufacturers. I'm assuming why wouldn't any of the manufacturers want to include their product in your program, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you want to be able to input the information that you have as far as storage arrangements, heights, space between racks, etc. And then iCalc will give you a list of 2, 3 manufacturers that make a sprinkler that can actually protect that, and then it's up to you to choose. Because I know like with the sprinkler contractor that I work for, family business, we don't use every sprinkler manufacturer out there, right?
Yeah.
We've got our ones that we like, the ones that we know are good and we have no problems with. And if there's a sprinkler that does it, I use those.
Yeah. No, that's the other part of it. We don't want to get into any manufacturer holy war.
Right.
Everybody's got their favorite, right? So in
That's
your
right.
account, there'll be kind of a checkbox for, which manufacturers do you want to use? And
Right.
hopefully out of those, it'll suggest you a couple sprinklers that work. If not, maybe it'll suggest you something from a different manufacturer, but you'll be able to save your preferences and use your favorite manufacturer.
And Phil has done a great job. Once NFPA 13 gives you choices, just say, for example, ESFR,
Right.
K14, K16.8, K19.6, K22.4, K25. So what he has done, since the NFPA 13 gives you different choice and different pressure, he calculates the total flow required for each of the apps. That way you know what sprinkler head would be most economical to use.
Right.
And
Yeah. So
then you
that's
can go to the manufacturer site and get the data in.
Yeah, so that's where like we were talking a little bit earlier about eventually having, you have many different applets now, but you could eventually get to where, okay, I've performed my flow test. This is how much water I have available. This is how far off that water supply the building is. This is what I'm storing in here, and kind of have the program do the heavy lifting for you. That's huge.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. It's
that's
going to take
that's
a while to
most
get
of
there, right?
the that's well, absolutely. It's not
Yeah,
it's not a small undertaking, or else if it was easy, there would already be these products out there, right? You guys are just like, hey,
yeah,
you know what? Much like the podcast, nobody else has it out there yet, so I'm going to do it, kind of sink or swim. And it's
yeah.
yeah, I
No,
like I
exactly.
like the product
People
here.
ask us all the time, what are you going to do if someone copies you? And we say, great.
That's right.
We would love someone to copy us.
I've
We
said the
don't know
same
why
thing.
anybody
Yep.
else isn't going for it. So, if someone copies us and makes the industry better, we're all for that. So,
Yep. And I'm the same way. I will promote Drew Slocum's got one. His is the fire protection podcast. I've had Drew on I've had him
yeah,
twice. We've come on and talked, and he's got a great product. He comes from a like a design and sales side. I come from the fitting and design side. So we have different opinions on things, and it's good to see. It also gives me somebody to listen to when I'm in the car, because that was my problem with not problem, but that was the reason I started the podcast. Is I kept going on iTunes and looking for something audio to listen to related to
yeah,
fire sprinklers. So now that he's come around, it's awesome because I can listen to his. My wife and kids, they can only listen to me talk for so long. They don't want to listen to a
yeah, yeah.
podcast in the car with me, right?
Get a little competition going, right?
That's right.
No,
That's
we
absolutely,
actually
yeah.
we met up with Drew. What was it, a year or two
Yeah,
ago
yes, right.
when we started iCalc? Because inspect
Yep.
point is kind of in a similar niche,
Right.
but for the other side of the business. So
No, he was very supportive for ours. He
Yeah,
gave us
yeah.
a few ideas what we could do with it.
yeah,
And this is all this is, Chris, what our industry needs is talking and sharing the information within us. So that makes us feel do better, and we are protecting the build people's lives. So whatever we can do to expedite that thing will be good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've said it once, I've said it 100 times, right? The industry is evolving every day. Something, maybe not every day, but at least once a week, there's a change in the industry, a change in a product, a new product being released. And if you're not staying up to date with these changes in the industry, the industry is just going to leave you in the dust. And there's a lot of fitters out there that Victolic's doing some crazy things with evolving the way we install piping, and a lot of people see it as changes. And my grandfather was probably one of those first guys shaking his fist at Victolic when they came out with the grooved coupling, right? No,
Yeah.
you gotta thread that 8-inch skid 40 together. But you know you hobbling around when he was in his later years, right? Because he was threading 8-inch skid 40 and 6-inch skid 40 and throwing it up on his shoulder, and that's hard, right? That's hard on the body.
Yeah.
And the company that I've used, the company that I work for, our family business again, we've used those grooved ESFR sprinklers. And typically for me, from the fitter side of things again, the biggest issue with larger sprinklers is people think they need to crank them in. They got to tighten them in. It's a bigger thread. It's got to be tightened in like you're tightening in a piece of 1-inch pipe, but it's brass, right? So
That's right.
Yeah.
typically with ESFR systems, you get leaks, right? You get a lot of leaks, you get a lot of strain on the brass, on the seat, and things like that. And we did one. Wasn't a big job. It was I think it was around 400 or 500 ESFRs on a building edition. We didn't have a single leak. It worked out awesome.
That's true, right? Like you say, our industry is changing every day. There are a lot of news articles that you read, but it's very hard to keep up with it. And unfortunately, our younger people don't get exposed to it because NFPA 13, NFPA 14, NFPA 15, NFPA 20 is getting so complicated. So we thought this app will help people at least to get interested and don't get scared when you open up an NFPA 13 or an NFPA 14. Say, where do I go? So it's just a starting point. Doesn't solve all the problems, but solves majority of the problems.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, what I'm gonna use this app for is I'm gonna use it as confirmation. I still, part of the enjoyment of designing is finding the solution to a problem, right? So you have a customer who wants to do a certain design, certain storage arrangement. So I've got to dig in the book. I got to find the best, most economical way to protect the area, protect the hazard, and I can do that. I can find what I think is the best way, and then I can double check my facts using your apps.
Sure.
Yeah, no, exactly. We that's what we want. We want it to be, here's your 3 options, here's the trade-offs on them. Here you go. Read more.
Yeah, awesome. So now I hope it's not another 7 months from when we talk next, but the next time you come on the podcast and talk, what are we going to be talking about? What new things are you guys coming out with? The storage app's coming out soon with an expansion coming up in the next couple months. What other kind of applets are you guys looking to expand on?
Actually, I'd like to ask you. I'd like to put out a call to your listeners to kind of tell us what we should work on next. We have ideas, but we're not always right. We're a sample size of 1, so we'd like to hear from your listeners if that's okay. I'd ask everybody to just email phil@fsc-icalc.com with their ideas for applets, and we'll get right to work on them. So hopefully we'll have a bunch of crowdsourced applets when we talk next.
Yeah, there you go. One thing I could think of off the top would be, and I can't recall seeing it or not, but some sort of an obstruction, like an obstruction chart. Punch in the type of the sprinkler, distance away from it, how far above am I allowed to be? Something easy like that would be a good quick little thing for the guys in the field, where you can have people that are in design looking for it, as well as people in the field, and get a little bit more information out there for fitters.
I think it's a great idea, Chris. We go through that every day in our business. And I know everybody else in our fire protection goes through that. And each sprinkler type has a different obstruction criteria, whether it's the residential or quick response or storage. And I think that will be a great tool for everybody else. So thank you for see how it helps.
Yeah.
You telling us, give us idea, and your listener can help us to share the same kind of thing, what their pain points are, and what we can do, because we have a Phil here. He can do almost everything, and we have resources too. So any idea we can get will be great one.
There you go. Phil can do anything. So if you have if you have something that you want FSC iCalc to develop, Phil can do it. There's no questions. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. No, don't interrupt me now. It will be there. No pressure. And you heard it. That sounded to me like he's going to be developing a fire sprinkler podcast app for us. How about that? There you go. He can do anything.
Automated interview. Yeah.
I expect it to be launched before the end of this conversation.
Okay.
Awesome.
I'll get right on that, Chris.
Yeah, you make the obstruction one first. That's one that I want. Phil and Hasu, do you have anything else you want to talk about before we get off, before I let you guys go and get back to work?
I'd like to just give the quick sales pitch, if that's all right with you.
Absolutely.
Of course, if you like anything we're talking about today, you want to check out the applets more, you can go to our website at www.fsc-icalc, that's ICALC.com. There's a 30-day free trial where you can check out all the applets, drive around on the site yourself and see how you like it. No credit card required or anything. So if you're interested, go check it out.
Awesome. Phil and Hasu, always great talking to you guys. Thanks for coming on and giving a little bit more information, and hopefully people check out your apps. At the very least, just to be involved with what's going on in the future. Any ideas that anybody out there has for how we can build this application and this web-based application up more? Again, what was your email? Just if anybody wants it again.
That's Phil, PHIL, at fsc-icalc.com.
Awesome. And then www.fsc-icalc.com if you want a trial, 30-day free trial. Phil, Hasu, always great talking to you guys. Thanks for coming on.
You as well, Chris.
Thank you. Appreciate it.